Hey guys, this is the Biomassed podcast on episode 20 something. And just wanted to appreciate everybody for pinging us up on Twitter and in local on Eve and Dust all day. So we've got a pretty interesting show for you tonight. I know I say that like every other week, but it is interesting to me at least. So what we're going to talk about tonight is a little bit focused on PC, like how PC came about, what's happened to it in the last 6 months, and where do we think it'll go with Legion, or where we would like it to go in Legion. And to that end, we've brought in a couple guys that really have a ton of PC experience. Everybody in channel tonight's played quite a bit, but we're gonna have we've got a couple of guests in particular, one brand new to the show, and should be a pretty fun discussion. As usual, we'll lead off with a little bit of discussion from the CPM on a couple items. And then a little bit on Hotfix Delta. I think there's been some clarification to the numbers on a variety of different little topics. I've got one minor bone to pick, and I'll stab the CPMs in the eye with it at some point in the show. And after that, we'll dive right into the meat of it and talk a little bit about kind of what we're referring to as the past, present, and the hopeful future of what PC is. So with that, guys, let's go ahead and get started with some introductions. Pokey, if you can lead us off tonight.
Hey, I'm Pokey Draven, CEO of OSG Planetary Operations and co-host here on Biomassed.
Good deal, Sarizel.
I'm Sarizel, a CPM1 member, co-host here on Biomassed, and a leader of the Top Men Alliance.
Zatara.
My name is Zatara, and I'm the founder and CEO of Fatal Absolution, and I am also a member of CPM1.
Okay, cool. Hynox.
Hello there, my name's Hynox. I'm a man on the internet who writes things and then gets banned for writing those things.
And you do it very well, by the way. Get banned, that is. Okay.
Thank
BAMM
you.
HAVOC.
Was that me, was it?
Yep, that's you, brother.
All right. Hello. BAMM HAVOC. Hello. No one special, just a dude. Yeah, really, that's it.
Okay. So now that we got the niceties out of the way, I'm Jason Larson. I'm one of the co-hosts here on Biomassed. I'm in OSG Planetary Operations in the Dust side, and I fly for Agony Unleashed on the Eve side, small game PvP Corp. So interesting note, and I'll go ahead and kind of segue into it a little bit, or at least foreshadow is probably the right term. Earlier today, there was a very interesting open letter to folks that was released on the Matani.com that'll probably play into our PC discussion. It's a big thing on the Eve side, so a lot of Dust guys may or may not be tracking it, but if you play Eve, you'll understand why it's important to Dust in the future, or perhaps a little bit about why the metagame was so important at one point. Now, with that, we'll go ahead and turn it over to our CPM1 candidates. I think we're pretty thin on CPM1 news this week, right, guys?
Yeah, no, it's just, Delta released. I've been forum warrioring, mostly defending the ADS change in particular. It seems to be quite unpopular with ADS pilots, and I think that's okay.
Okay. Now, I also noticed that they released a lot of, I guess, clarification or some further explanation of some of the Hotfix Delta changes sort of writ large. I noticed that, like in the spreadsheet that Rattati originally released, when you go to the rifle tab, it says bunch of changes nobody understands. Then he's basically made a post, I think it was today or yesterday, where he goes into a bit more detail, like sort of by weapon system, on what those different changes to the mechanics were.
I might not have read that post.
Yeah, no, it was actually kind of interesting, and that is that small bone I'm going to poke you guys with, since they've yet again increased the recoil to the rail rifle. Just throwing it out there after our discussion last week.
I wasn't too thrilled about any additional rail rifle changes. I don't think I knew one was in.
Okay, yeah, no drama. So I'll just kind of open up the floor. Is there anything in Hotfix Delta that you guys, at least now that the smoke is cleared out, was particularly good, or you're still in a wait to see mode?
I'm so happy the ADS got nerfed. It's just a matter of waiting to see if it's enough or not, or too much.
Okay, fair enough.
I think I'm really apprehensive for snipers. I I tried sniping, and I just wasn't as impressed as I was pre-Delta. I'm actually just slightly worried. I guess I don't know. I need to play more with it. 'Cause
They're
I haven't put
actually
in.
they're really powerful. I mean, I was trying to counter snipe some of the mini snipers that were out there, and it's a pain in the butt. But we'll
counter
have
snipe?
to see. Yeah, just there are so many of them out there right now.
I'm just talking about sniping without like sniping regular like infantry, not counter sniping specifically. But
Well, 'cause it
regardless,
was a
like
buff
what I'm
across
talking
the
about
board.
is. I'm sorry.
It was pretty much a buff across the board.
I mean, the biggest thing for me is that I think that honestly, in retrospect, I wish I would have pushed for body shots, maybe to get an increase in DPS.
They did.
I
They did.
more of a buff, because like when I was like, wow, Soraya nipping at my heels. I'm haven't been on Biomassed in a while. Is this like a regular occurrence?
Sometimes.
Ouch. All right. Well, I'll just shut up and not have an opinion.
No, Jesus.
Ooh.
Keep going.
No, I'm fine. I'm fine.
Okay. Well, let's see. In general, my impression of Hotfix Delta, like the parts of it that I've played with, I I thought the HMG changes like to the burst were not too bad. It's noticeable, but not bad. Let's see. I have not seen a lot of ADSs, nor do I fly them, so it's very hard for me to have like a really practical opinion. I have seen some of the drama on the forums about them, and you know the thing. And here's the thing, guys. And I'll say this, you know, kind of on anybody's position, even if it's one that is detrimental to me in terms of play style. The reality is, if you've been playing a certain way for months and months and months and months, and then CCP changes it dramatically, there's gonna be some very understandable aggravation. And the one thing CCP generally doesn't do very well is get it right the first time. And I'm not saying it is right or wrong. It's just that's the simple fact is that at least their track record to date has been to either underwhelm or overwhelm, and rarely do they just whelm people. So, like I said, I'm taking all the comments with a grain of salt right now, just because I don't fly ADSs, and I haven't seen enough of them to really garner a judgment. Now, I have tried the swarms out a little bit. I like it a lot. I like the faster missiles, and I like the tougher, like not being able to turn around corners quite as well. I think that's actually better. It's a little bit better for the pilots, and I think it's a little bit better for the guys on the ground. So overall, like I said, what I've seen so far, I kind of like.
Well, the thing to bear in mind is, you know, the thing is ADSs have been incredibly spoiled for a long time. The stats on them are terrifying. They were too good, way too good on orders of magnitude.
Wait, Soraya, have you ever forged in a PC before? Because that's a living hell.
Yeah, I've done Forge Gun in PC.
Do it all the time. Not fun. Never was.
I haven't done it in a while. I haven't done PC in a while.
I actually haven't played since the done any PC since the hotfix came out, so I'm looking forward to seeing how, trying to think of the phrase, scary the ADSs are, because
Yeah, well, I mean, like I said, it's one of those where, like, I still have to take it all. Like, I really do have to take it all with a grain of salt, because it's hard to tell. I do know that there is. I don't know that you have to nerf something to make other things better or give yourself protection. That was the only thing I'm a little bit concerned about. I thought if they just helped out some of the AV weapon systems and tried that first, you know, leave the dropships roughly where they were at, but try to make some things more lethal to them. I think I would have preferred that, but I see the logic in the post, the blue tag post, about how they went about it. So, I mean, go ahead.
I think the ADSs are fine. I think the main problem lies with the forge guns and swarm launchers, because the range on the swarms has always been kind of wonky, and the forge gun is like the most obtrusive weapon I've ever seen in a baseball bat. But other than that, yeah, pretty balanced.
Hynox, when you say wonky, can you elaborate?
Well, I think I might have told this, like, Zatara might have read this already, but I'm kind of the opinion that the forge gun as a concept of a weapon doesn't really make sense. Cool using it, but as an AV weapon, it doesn't Like, it's a weapon based on accuracy that you also cannot aim with. It's a weapon based on pinpoint timing that also has huge delay,
If
and you
you're
also
using
have
a
to
mouse,
time perfectly.
if
Yeah,
you're
if you're
using a
using a
mouse, it
mouse,
works
it's better.
perfectly.
Yeah.
It's actually OP with a mouse. I can snipe with it, except it
I've
one
seen
shots everything.
people use it as a close quarters weapon
Yep.
in close range with a mouse.
I killed a shotgun scout with one once because I had it charged up
Very-
and I got shot, so I turned around and let go and he died. It was funny. Scouts' bodies fly so far.
All right. So
Anyway,
we've established the next thing that needs to get nerfed. All right.
Yes. Actually, that's one of
Leave
those
my
things.
forge gun alone.
I'm gonna cry.
yeah.
I'm gonna cry horribly when the standard forge gets nerfed, but it really needs to.
Leave my forge gun alone.
It's OP,
I kind of
dude.
agree. Yeah.
It's OP. I use it, and I can admit it's freaking OP. The big thing is, though, is they did make it a lot harder to hit infantry with it this patch because they took away the splash damage, so you do have to actually direct hit people. And I did notice that does have an effect. It's not, I mean, a lot of my hits with the forge gun are direct hits, but it
The
affects.
splash damage kind of sucked anyway. The only time I can recall it being effective was when I played a PC against FA. We set up 5 forge gunners on the rings, and we just bombard all the heavies in the city with like 5 forge guns at a time, and we called it the Eye of Sauron. And that is the only time in my entire life splash damage has ever been actually useful.
Now, I mean, that's I've just now started to like really put forge guns to work, and like since I've been playing heavies a little bit more, and I will have to say this: I do not play with a keyboard and mouse, and I like. By the way, that's what I was referring to that needed to get nerfed. As I stare at Sorai's name on the screen very hard. The forge guns, it's really hard for me to tell like what's because I've only really been playing with it for about 2 weeks. So I will say this though, like the difference in the mechanics of the weapons are dramatic enough that I kind of like that there's a huge difference between the standard, the breach, and the assault, and how you have to play them, which I think is pretty good. Now, in terms of the damage delivery, I'm not quite good enough to start picking off individual like infantry players, but it's pretty damn effective against vehicles. So I do enjoy playing that.
Yeah, one thing I was about to say, I've been running Forge Gun since, I believe, late Chromosome, so a while. I still do not know how to balance it. I have no fucking idea. It's such an obtrusive weapon.
It's not really obtuse. Think of the
No, what they
Forge
do.
Gun as an RPG in, say, Call of Duty or Battlefield 4, for example. It's not obtuse at all. It's just a different mechanic, that's all. Whereas the RPG in both guns have flight time and duration of flight as well as an arc. Whereas the Forge Gun is just... The problem with the Forge Gun, I feel, is it fires in a straight line. You let it go, and at 300 meters it stops. Pinpoint. That's perhaps maybe what they need to think about. Maybe adding an arc to it, Perhaps.
It's like the bastard child of an RPG in a 50 cal.
And a bit of lightning, yeah.
BAMM. So do you think it should have something like not like full on plasma cannon, but like a little bit of drop to it then?
Well, look, don't take my word as given. It's just ideas being thrown around here, right? I've always sort of said perhaps maybe instead of nerfing the fucking Forge Gun Splash, which I think the Forge Gun Splash got nerfed after 1.4 because a lot of rooftop Forge Gunners were relying on that for kills. Fair play.
Yeah.
That was one of the things. And they hit tanks and dropships very, very hard. And tanks and dropships had to run away. When a Forge Gun comes out, the aerial area is on lockdown. Especially with the Assault Forge, because you can just rapid fire an entire magazine into a dropship before he knows what's hit him. And that, in some respects, is pretty unfair if it's a fairly new pilot. An experienced pilot will know, alright, got hit, you'll fly off. The Forge Gun, I feel, needs a bit of an arc to it. Maybe a range increase and an arc to it, so that it provides some sort of skill. I don't want to say firing a Forge Gun doesn't require skill, because you can't aim the thing. You've actually got to wait till your reticule is just about to be red, and then let it go, because you've got to time that round. It's all about the timing. You can't fire it when it's red, because by then the target's moved off. You've got to fire just before the target moves red. And that's when it goes. Boom. And you're dead. And it's a nice warm fuzzy feeling when a shotgun scout particularly, or an overknifer particularly, flies halfway across the map because you've blown his face off. feel kind of sorry when I shoot heavies because they're easy targets, slow and fat. Poor heavies.
Yeah,
Poor heavies.
I think it should also be said though that when I say that the forge gun is underpowered, this is coming from someone who plays and damn near nothing else.
No, look. I'm not going to even profess to play PCs. I've played, I think, a grand total of 3 matches where I had a great laugh and a giggle. But I'm not a PC player. I'm not that higher echelon player because the PC player I think. God, too much to drink. I think are the high-end players that we as a community have. I'm a dirty, grubby, snotty, mud-clad, fucking, faction war player. That sort of player. That's where I live and roam around and fail considerably, a lot. I'm not good enough to be in PC, and I never will be. But shit, I enjoy playing the game, so fuck it, I'm gonna play the game.
I kind of compared being in PC to like an addiction, except instead of cocaine, it's just lead injected into your arm. Because the weird thing with PC, it's fun, but it's also incredibly stressful. But the worst part, and this is why I can't play pubs anymore. Like I'll play pubs for a little bit, then quit, is because I play PC, this high-end like work-based game, and then I go back to pubs and I get like an aneurysm every time the teammates do anything, and then just leave immediately after they cap anything. So bad that it just applies to every game now.
Well, look, you've got a acute problem of not working with the team, and the team not working with you. You're in a group of randoms, as you said. They're not going to mark on in TeamSpeak or team effort, whatever. Whereas if you go PC, everyone's got their job, everyone knows where they go, everyone's got their role. When you run around with random blue dots and you're a squad of 4 men, you've only got to rely on your 4 men. And hopefully the one drop-up link that's put in a bot by some other random, so it all, around what teamwork you're prepared to give. I've always said, squad up with fucking randoms, make a squad, and you will win. I put out a video months ago saying teamwork is OP, not the equipment.
You're
it's
not
the
wrong.
Equipment at fault. It's the people using the equipment. I've always been an advocate of this. No, don't nerf stuff. Tweak, and not tweak by 10%. Tweak by maybe 0.5%. Which I think Ratatati is pretty good for, because he will tweak Delta until there's like a lot less dust in the air, which is, I think, a good idea. I think he does a good job, does Rat Boy.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair point, and this is probably a good bridge over to the PC topic. So, and actually, I kind of like Zatara, if you don't mind, if you could kind of help out with this a little bit, since I think you've been between you and Pokey, I think you guys have been playing PC the longest, and then probably Hynox. But if you could kind of recount a little bit about. And again, understanding that a lot of guys that listen on the podcast, they may not understand that there was this thing called court battles, and then there was the original versions of PC that came out. Could you give like a brief synopsis of what you saw as PC was developing, or what were the sort of steps CCP took to bring PC into the game?
Well, my first experiences with understanding what PC was going to be was actually before Uprising 1.0 hit, when Cast 514 podcast came out, and CCP Fox 4 had appeared on the episode with CCP Logibro, who was actually at the time Gridaris. This was before he was hired, and Nova Knife, who was at the time still on the War Council, or I don't know if it had even been called CPM 0 yet. But so they basically had a podcast where he detailed about a lot about what they wanted to do with PC, and even just talking down the road, like what a roadmap could be about what they would do later on. And he talked about things like having different district sizes for different sizes of the battles, and all of these things that even now I'm pushing for. Or that I would push for if we had, that was something that could be on the table, that just would have made PC this, not only this extremely different kind of game mode from as far as an FPS goes that I've ever played, but also, it was going to stretch the boundaries even further. Like I remember, okay, so when PC came out, right, we had all these districts. There were 245 districts, and it was extremely expensive at the time to get into PC. It was 80 mil per clone pack. And you got 150 clones, and you go and drop it on a district. And if the district wasn't occupied, there was a big land grab that day, where a bunch, there was basically, it was after downtime. There was just a boatload of people, and all of the districts were eaten up after like 10 minutes. At the time, I was still in subreddit. This was prior to when I joined Pink Flippy Bounty Hunters, about just a few days after Uprising actually dropped. And essentially, like, they grabbed 3 over near where ScarCon is, and it was actually not on ScarCon. It's the one above ScarCon. Anyway, close to STB Prime, and that was actually when STB Prime got dubbed, because Sever, grabbed all 10 districts. And anyway, it was a huge land grab, and Kronos grabbed a boatload of land, and Eon Alliance grabbed a lot of stuff, as much as they could. Hellstorm grabbed a lot. The LOI started shaping up. Imperfects were still there. Anyway, point is that, like, after the first few weeks, like, people started realizing there were some big problems with PC. The number one problem was lag. And the number two problem was just the sheer amount of money that you had to put into it, and the profits that players weren't exactly seeing, like, manifested to them through like actual end of game profit, like you got for winning a PC match. It was becoming evident that, but obviously, like, the main problem was the lag, and that was what, like, Uprising 1. I think, I don't even remember if it was Uprising 1.1 or whether it was just like within a few short weeks. I want to say even before June, or maybe early June, they patched it, and that was one of the first times. And it became like a repeating theme of trying to just get PC to not lag nearly as bad as it was. And I mean, obviously, that PC also became sort of a game mode as time went on, where you could, instead of finding things that were just only worked in pubs, like, for example, murder taxis, you would find things that were flavor of the month way before, because a lot of these vets, like, all of the vets obviously gravitated, or a lot of the hardcore vets, the majority of them, I would say, gravitated towards PC, because that was where, after Court Battles transitioned, Court Battles were like these things where you would, prior to Uprising in the open beta in Chromosome, where you could just play your 8-man team versus somebody else's 8-man team on a corporation level. And essentially, like, you could still bring in other people. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you could still bring in people from other corporations, no? To ring for you in these corporation battles?
Yeah. I don't know if you could or not.
So. I think you had to be in the same corporation.
I honestly don't remember. It's been that long, but I don't remember ever a time being where I was put in a corporation battle where it wasn't. But I almost want to say, like, for example, Synergy Gaming did have greatness achieved through training, and I would almost feel like they would have played like GAP players in CB. So I wonder if they just had their own, I guess, on the side. Anyway, that's getting off topic. Point is, like, when PC dropped, like, you could also have things like AWOXing that became like, we had to get a patch in for, because it was so easy to just get into a PC battle pulled in by somebody, and you would have no idea who pulled in the AWOXers, and there was no way to get them out of the battle. So they had to patch that in order for you to be able to, as a director or CEO, kick someone out of the battle, but only in the war barge. There was still that element. If someone did want to AWOX you, they would actually have to appear as a friend, but then betray you actually in the match. There's just, I don't know. There was a ton of things that just made PC sort of like not only this revered game mode for proving yourself as a team and as a corporation, and actually creating like the history of PC, what defined like certain planets, what defined certain corporations and their legacies, and sort of like these players have gone into other games and still carry that legacy. I remember I started playing Destiny a few weeks ago, and I put up the Fatal Absolution tag. And FA was not exactly like the greatest corp in PC of all time, like, not even close. But I mean, I got mails from people saying, "Is this the same Fatal Absolution from Dust 514? Is this the same one from PC? Like, we got trashed by in a PC or whatever." And I still have mails. Like, I still get them from time to time. I've gotten 4 over the last 2 weeks since I started playing Destiny, and it's just amazing to me that can carry on to other games. And I think that's really the story of what PC is about. Is this idea that it was far more than the sum of its parts. People made PC way more than I think that what the developers envisioned for it. Because I don't necessarily think that they envisioned that we were going to have like a PC history. I don't think that they envisioned that people would come to know planets as Sever Prime. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't, but regardless, it happened. And that's like, that's some things that sort of transitioned over the last 6 months. Which, if you want to like elaborate on a little bit, Pokey, like what's your changes over the last 6 months?
Well, I will admit I've been less active in PC over the last 6 months, but I mean, I think for me, because you mentioned ScarCon, the Covert Intervention Alliance actually had ScarCon in some surrounding areas in the beginning in the initial land grab, and that's when we first started butting heads with STB and Zion TCD and whatnot, and it was an absolute shitstorm early on. It was just beating the hell out of each other, and like you said, despite warnings a lot of the vets had made when they'd crunched the numbers, once we started getting in there and really going at it, we realized how utterly broken the PC system was. I mean, it basically turned into who has the most money saved up, because we're just going to throw cash at each other with zero profit, and it was a real pain in the ass to actually get people to even keep fighting, because I mean, we all realized that you can't make money. This is all kind of pointless because the system itself was fundamentally flawed. And I think that while people, like you said, turned it into something, more of a social thing, I think in terms of a game mechanic, it was broken from the start, and it's been very difficult to kind of reinvigorate that initial, energy people had that they wanted to see in PC because of those broken mechanics. I mean, it obviously caused a lot of the issues with the blue donut for a while, but I think in general, people started to recognize over time that this wasn't necessarily worth it in terms of game mechanics. Now, social setting aside, I mean, that is, of course, a very big part of a New Eden game. I think that's cool that, you can go to a different game and your name still carries over. But in terms of the system, I think that in general, PC needs to be completely reimagined. And I do hope that from, a lot of experience of the older vets in the early days of PC, I mean, we've seen it improve slightly and then kind of crash and burn with the removal of profitability from having districts, but there was no good fix for it, really. And so I really do hope that they don't just take a modified version of what we had for PC or what PC has become and transfer that to Legion, because I'm really concerned that it'll happen again, because PC, we all had really great visions. I mean, I had this awesome epic vision of supply lines of clones and moving them from district to district and, kind of controlling the landscape of the space and whatnot. And that never really happened just because of the way the mechanics were. So, for me, I hope we can actually see that vision, because I think that is what they wanted, was a feeling of like a galactic empire that you're fighting for and pushing around and, going head to head and trying to flank your enemy and whatnot. And I think that just never really happened. So, for me, I'm hopeful that we can actually get a system like that, but experience shows that they just cannot build it off of really any of the mechanics or the ideas they had for the PC we have in Dust, because it's just too broken, and no amount of fixes other than a complete rework is going to really, make that better. So for me, I hope we can see something more like the original vision and less of what we got.
Yeah, I think I actually do think that the idea of PC is one that's worth bringing to Legion. I think that there's a lot of like things that are salvageable about PC. There's a few. I actually think that with a few tweaks, PC could be just really amazing. Like if they limited how far you could send clones, if they improved how the accessibility for costs as far as getting into PC and as far as re-entering PC. If they, one of the main things that PC needs is that right now there's just not enough there's not enough corporations out there to take advantage of 245 districts. So like, for example, you have, corporations like Nion Center, even like us in FA, where we've got, 40 districts, and it's like, in a real scenario, if we were being attacked on those all the time, no way. There's absolutely no way we could be holding 40 districts. We might be able to hold 10 or 12, because you realize that that's like 8 hours of fighting every 2 days to hold 16 districts. Unless you have unless you have 32 people on an hour for an extended period of time, which we don't have. I don't know if anybody has that, and we're still one of the top 10 corporations for activity on Dust, I think.
I think you're number 2.
Are we really? Yeah. So we're still up there, and there's no way. I might have 25 on, at a max. So there's no way we're going to play more than one PC team at a time. Point being that like if they were to reel in the number of districts or make the districts smaller again, like the number of players that you needed in order to play a PC match, I think there's a ton of little things and changes that could be brought to Legion depending that would just adapt it so that it was more palatable for the player base itself. Because the needs of the player base honestly changed from 1.4 to 1.8. Like that was that. I mean, pre 1.6, I feel like, or even pre 1.4, I feel like there was a lot of like invested interest in PC. Like there was a lot of corporations. I remember, more than 60 corporations being in PC, and we tried to revive that after DNS Donut got destroyed, and the number of corps just weren't there. The activity just wasn't there.
I think the issue, and now we kind of glossed over something that we probably need to note here that was, I think, kind of critical in sort of the rise and fall of PC. So, like once you remove the issues with CCP, which we certainly had an effect on this, like around FanFest, but even prior to that, the way there was basically a way that corps could make money passively through district control, or ISK rather. Let me be clear on that. And that there is the connection to PC that people wanted higher in gameplay, and they wanted exactly what Hynox was talking about. And actually, and frankly, that's what attracted me to that game form as well. Is very, very crisp, very. You had to be really on the top of your game, all 16 players at the same time. Very good communication skills, individual play skills, and the ability to actually optimize yourself across a 16-person team, and not just yourself. I just thought the level of gameplay was much more attractive, and I think that brought a lot of people in. But there were two things. It was the fact that you could team deploy, which is still the only way to reliably team deploy 16 people. And you had the method of making passive ISK, which was developed by a few of the PC Alliance leaders. And I think Zatara, if you can, Hynox, can probably elaborate a little bit on where that came from and sort of what that started to lead the Dust community down the road of.
You mean with like the rise of passive ISK, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Farming. Well, the concept of passive ISK farming had been around forever, but I believe the first ones to really kick it off were like the Renegade Alliance and to an extent Negative Feedback. And because they reached a relative level of control where they managed where nobody would attack them and they would just farm ISK and control in like, the DNS Fourth Reich in space, where the joke was that Kane lived in a gold mansion made of other gold mansions that was just being constructed eternally. And that's honestly about it. ISK had a sort of role after the fall of DNS, but activity was relatively back up, so there was like too much conflict going around for anyone to really exploit it, except for Nyansan, and then they kind of just killed it. And that, aside from the versus the World War, which is basically how everyone turned to calling it, that was essentially the last thing where PC had like tangible money coming out of it.
Yeah, and kind of the point that I was trying to weave in is, as Pokey kind of indicated, that there was a certain ISK cost of doing business for PC, and then once folks really turned ISK farming, like passive district farming, into like a cottage industry, the gulf between sort of the upper end of the PC crowd and literally everybody else in the game became just incredibly dramatic. And so what effectively happened is you could show up with like 5 real players and a bunch of like dudes you picked up out of local, and if you did that long enough, you would wear the other guys out purely through ISK, through money. Now, the two things started to happen. You had that effect, but then what also contributed to is because the cost of entry into PC was so high, you start to have a shrinking pool of people that were routinely playing at the PC level. 16 players, a practiced and rehearsed team that was actually going at it. So eventually the skill gap also became wider in between most other dust corps and that upper level of the PC tier that ended up controlling those districts and making that money. And that was one of the things that it became. There are two barriers to PC for most corps, for the majority of corps. One, just the raw ISK associated with it over time. And then part two was really going to be your skill gap, because I think at its height, like there was basically no way for anybody to get into PC that wasn't already there. Now, there were a lot of corps that would rename themselves or that would break apart and reform under a new name with different players, but all those players were walking in with a lot of ISK, or their ISK was being transferred between corps. So the barrier to entry for the majority of the player pool in Dust was just really tough to get over. And I think that's really what started to make things toxic for a lot of the community. And the DNS jumped in and certainly didn't help.
So I have a completely different perspective. So for example, like when you make the point that for example, that negative feedback and who was the other corporation that you were saying?
Renegade Alliance in general, particularly just Neon Sun.
Like we're farming ISK. See, what happened was in the beginning of PC, right? Like we had this big. There were like three main donuts, and then there was negative feedback, who owned a very few amount of districts, but as far as firepower went, were the top of the line.
Yeah.
And that was like people went into PC with a boatload of money, at least the vet corporations did, because the more you had played, the more salvage you had. And thus when Uprising dropped, for example, like I got 380 million salvage worth of like ISK back refunded when Uprising dropped. So there were whole corporations, for example, when I joined Team Players after Pink Fluffy Bounty Hunters imploded and Cubs invited me to Team Players, along with Zero and everyone else, they he had something like 2.6 billion already in the corp wallet just from people who had donated, like 150 from 30 players or something, I don't know. And the point being that like there was already like a huge gap going into it between a corporation like 187 at the time, if anyone even remembers that, with Stigmatus and Brutus, Brutus Hawk and whatever, and then a corporation like Team Players or Imperfects, for example, who had billions, like a couple billion, I want to say, like Pink Fluffy Bounty Hunters, who had something like 1.8 billion or something. There was just a huge differential. I mean, you talk about the amount of ISK that the alliances were able to drop. For example, when PC actually started, I mean, STB was dropping just money on 10 districts. That's 800 million just dropped within 10 minutes. And then in order to attack any district that was outside of 4 jumps at the time, which they changed eventually and I think should be changed back, it was like a huge, massive clone like disadvantage, like a huge clone loss. I remember there was a particular match where negative feedback actually attacked Red Star, and Red Star almost won and always bragged about how it was so close or whatever. But the point was that negative feedback had started the match with 113 clones and won. And that was because they misunderstood the mechanics and they were trying to save money and not spend that 80 million clone pack. And anyway, the point being that like locking didn't even like the huge clone profits didn't come until Team Players owned a boatload of the map. Like Team Players was the first one to really get huge on the map. They ended up with something like 26%. And to your point about like Jason, where people could just throw money out and throw people from local in, like there were corps like STB who had money and players like that, who had a huge amount of activity, number one activity in the game. That's why they're still at the top of the kill board for all time, and still haven't been passed by Molon, even though they've been dead for months. They had a huge amount of money, a huge amount of players, and yet they couldn't hold anything. So I think that totally and that was this true for a bunch of corps who had a lot of players, a lot of activity, and a lot of money being generated or could have been generated when taxes started rolling in, which I don't remember when that was. I think it was 1.3 or 1.4. I can't remember exactly. But point being that or even the FEC war against Eon, which failed miserably, even though it was backed with lots of money. They spent something like, I want to say like 2 billion at least on the first initial round of attacks, and they won like 3% of them. And the re-ups, the re-ups percentage was even worse. It was like, they flipped like 3 or 4 districts out of over 2 billion spent, even though they had a huge amount advantage in terms of number of players to field. because one of the problems with PC is that same 16-man team, and this was what the Forum QQ was about at the time, was that same 16-man team could just could defend a huge amount of districts. And that was why people wanted to change it at the time, so that, you couldn't sit there and put, have districts who were, timers coming online back to back to back to back to back the way it was. And so, like, for example, what I'm getting to, the point here is that when you're talking about the ISK being generated, a lot of ISK was being generated by team players in the June and July and August months, and we had like a fair amount of ISK. I think Hubs would tell you somewhere between 20 and 30 billion, I want to say, at the end of it, because we were owned like a quarter of PC. But that was only capable because of what Hynox was talking earlier about, where people got to a point where I don't want to waste money, so I'm not going to attack the big guys. Or, we would never get attacked except for by no-name scrubs, because if anyone did attack us, we'd go and take all of their stuff. And it got to a point where everyone, that Mol and Labe and everyone was just planning behind closed doors to attack us, which resulted in the FEC. Another thing that I would contest is like that whole point about corps not being able, like the monetary issue being what prevented people from contesting these big corps. I would say FA stands directly in opposition to that. Like, I broke off 13 players, had absolutely no money at all, went and found people in public matches who I had never played with before, like Genova and TTW, that became cornerstone players of a PC team that challenged AE and beat AE and negative feedback like over and over until, we went to go break up the donut. So I think that and AE did that before us in contesting team players. Now, they actually did have a core team that came from Hellstorm of about 15 or 20 players, and then they merged that with negative feedback. But I think FA in particular stands like as or even, well, Outer Heaven as well, kind of in a way, except for that they lost so many times and lost the wars. But eventually, towards the very end of PC, like saying, June and July of this year, like they got huge. Like they had a huge resurgence. And I don't know. I think that the biggest thing that killed PC was the locking. And the locking happened when, people like Black Phoenix Mercenaries and KQ and others figured out that you could lock your districts and then actually duplicate ISK by going in through the backdoor battles and simply make a whole nother like clone pack worth of ISK back, or not a clone pack, but half of a clone pack ISK back. Like you can make 16 million. And then on top of that, still be locking your districts the entire time. So all you'd had to do was win some battles to get a district or buy a district off of someone for whatever obscene price, a couple 100 million, because you could definitely always make that profit back and continue to, as long as you had someone who could no life it and be there to lock the districts. And that's why KQ and, others when we would try to attack them, it would be 5 or 6 districts, like district attacks stacked on top of each other, because they would have 5 or 6 people all spamming the clone pack attack button over and over again. And that eventually got fixed, but it was far too late. Like at that point, the DNS donut had already happened.
Right, but the issue is, let's also be real. Like if you owned enough districts, and you only wanted to defend X number, you would lock them too. I mean, that was not limited to a small number of people. That was a fairly widespread practice. One, because it was really hard to ignore. I mean, why would you not do it?
Why would everyone not lock every district? That's
eventually they started doing it. Yeah, and that was a large part of the issue. And the other thing I would kind of point out is, so you made some really good points about like the starting amount of ISK for some of the players. But let me throw this at you. What if you had somebody that started playing 3, 4, or 5 months after you? Like, what is a very low bar for you, or for that original crop of original sort of veterans that walked into, like after Uprising dropped? That bar was a lot higher to them than it was to you.
What bar? Can you elaborate?
Yeah, sure. Like the ISK bar in general. So let's say you start at Dusk and you link up with there's a group that organically forms, and you've got one or two guys that's been around for a little bit, but then you gradually start gaining steam and getting players. Most of these guys are much lower skill points, and they also have a whole lot less money in the bank. They're in the business of budgeting proto suits. Like, hey, I can only buy 2, and if I lose 1, I'm switching to a starter suit. And I don't think there was trust me, this is not evil. I just really believe that the frame of reference for those guys that were eventually trying to get into PC that started like that is very different than the frame of reference of somebody who's like in the beta and then started playing when it went live. Does that make sense?
No, I totally agree with you. And for like, I can tell you from experience, like when I brought in, for example, Genova and found, and we brought in Genova and TTW and these other players, and they or D-Water, and these people had 7 million SP, but were that good enough to go with advanced gear and be a factor in PC against proto players at the top end. Like,
I mean, let's also be real. And I've played with TT a couple times. He is not your average player.
No, and that was what PC was about. That was the thing, was that PC was absolutely unforgiving if against a top corp, if you didn't have you simply had to have a better team. Like, that's what it came down to. There was just, I mean, that's what it had to be about, was trying to find players that were better, not players who had a bunch of SP and money. Because I mean, all the players who had the most SP and money but were bad players were never factors in PC. But the players who were really good, who had 0 SP and no money, would be given money. Like Roner General, like, for example, he went to AE. He was, had no SP, no money. We threw money at these people. Of course, we want you to have whatever we have. We will give you anything you want. I wish I had a character to give him that had 20 million SP on an alt. I would have just given him the PSN, because you want to enable these people, like that was just the way that it was for me. Because when you say like this cohesive group just forms because you're playing, like, that extends more than, just saying like, oh, let's play together. It becomes a sort of family where like everything I have is yours, and what I want for you to do better than me in a PC.
It's not evil, man. And like it's I think this is my perspective on this. Okay. And you guys feel free to poke in. I think the combination of the mechanics in terms of how ISK was generated and the fact that it's really an ISK-based game, okay, that's the underlying factor. The combination of that, and then basically you got on this accelerated curve of PC was going to become for fewer and fewer people, and then money was going to become more of a factor. The players that you could find or cull out from other locations that were really good, you're right, those guys would quickly get pulled up into that smaller pool of people that were playing PC. And that's not evil. It's just kind of how it was. And I don't necessarily disagree that that's what should have happened. But my point is that all of this ultimately led to PC really having to be neutered at some point. And CCP frankly did that. And so that they basically, this is my opinion right now. The current state of PC is what it is, because I don't understand if there's a single advantage to owning a district at all. Basically what you get is a really shitty corp battle mechanic that you have to put on a timer. And that was the other thing about PC. That was a leftover from EVE is the timer mechanism. Now you have to have some way to regulate it, but that's to me what you have right now. There's no incentive. ISK was the original incentive, bragging rights and that kind of stuff, and literally the competitive aspect was clearly a factor. But ultimately, you brag to a larger degree based on the amount of money you're making overall, not perhaps individual players here and there. But I think that's all of these factors combined. Sort of a really shaky foundation for PC. Really, it acted like a stock market bubble. Like it popped, and then I don't know that it's going to come back in the current form. It certainly needs to be reworked.
Yeah, sorry, I hope I'm not interrupting anyone, but I think one of the main problems with PC that's kind of not talked about as much is the sense of scale really wasn't there, because like Zatara was earlier, TP, FA, and I think prominently, like, key example is like OH towards the end of the DNS donut. You'd have teams of like maybe 20 to 24 people just hold back like 300 to 400 people. And yes, they were good. Skill definitely factored in, but at a certain point, it became kind of disgruntling when, 1% of the game can essentially lock out the other 99% when you have to funnel in alliances and corps to like 16v16s. And I get that's like mainly just limitations of the game, sorry, but yeah, I get that it's mandatory limitations, but it definitely serves to kind of undermine the sense of grand perspective that you're supposed to get.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point, and I know I've heard like sort of your more blue collar corps would definitely say that. Probably guys like Mullen Labe and OSG for that matter. You have a lot of good players in there, but you've got so many, only so many to go around, and it's that I think was. It's one of those where I can when team players was at the height of their skill, I absolutely had a ton of respect for them because you know what, they were winning the matches. It's not just that they were showing up and people were losing; they were winning the matches. So, like on that hand, you have to give those guys, all the the respect based on their performance. What was frustrating was exactly what you said: is that you could not. There was no incentive to really building a large community or trying to put together large scale operations. It was really it was frustrating when you had a very small percentage of the total player pool that was effectively controlling it. And I think Zatara made a great point, is the original mechanic where there was a cost associated with how far we were from where you wanted to attack. And this is something I actually fenced with Kane Sparrow on multiple occasions. Was I always thought like if you go on Eve, right, and you look at the star map, there's a way you can toggle it where it pulls up basically like a hex tile system, and it overlays the entire star map. It flattens it out, and you see like a bunch of big colored hexes. And my point was always, you should only be able to attack systems or things that are essentially adjacent to where you're at. So bouncing all the way across the universe, left and right, and controlling all these districts, I don't like. There had to be a way of basically you have to affect power projection. That's what was allowing really small groups of really skilled players to effectively bottleneck large chunks of the community. That's probably the thing that really bugged me most, is if you could make it in such a way where you didn't have that mechanical bottleneck in there, I think things would have been a lot more tolerable overall.
And there is one thing that I will say that that you'll notice when you talk about Eon or anyone that had Nions on, is that not only did you have power projection, but imagine the FEC attacking all 78 of team players' districts, and it just being team players to play the battles. We would have inevitably we would have folded and lost a ton of districts, and then we would have fought for as many as we could, but the FEC largely would have been successful. The thing that made things so frustrating for people at that point in the game was sort of like the same thing afflicted Dust that's afflicted Eve, is that you have these huge donuts that so for example, like Eon, which consisted of had 5 major players. You had team players, and then you also had basically Not Guilty, Synergy, Red Star, and R&D, and that was like 5 pillars of like the Eon Alliance. And I'm telling you, like, those other 4 corps really banded together. I mean, we had when the FEC actually attacked us, we had hey guys, chill. Sorry. We had like Pradox and STB fielding tons of teams for us, and we were just playing this game of figuring out, okay, they're going to send a crappy team here. We're going to send in a slightly better team here. We're going to, and that's not dissing on STB. It's just that, STB wasn't at the top of the food chain at that point. They had lost Annie and Oakley and Jane, and they had lost everybody. A lot of their really great players. They were still rebuilding at that point. Anyway, point being that, guys, there was just a lot of
I think we've all established that Zatara's dogs are OP.
Yeah, my dog. I'm sorry, my dogs are there. It's 11 o'clock, and they're like, "Okay, it's time to go in Rough House." Anyway, but point being that there was
my dog.
There was just
okay. She doesn't bark. She just kind of makes like high-pitched squeaks that drive things away from her, and it works. It works even better because they're not like oh, that presents power. It's like, the fuck is that? Is that a rat? The fuck is that?
I'm sorry, man. Go ahead, Zatara. Like we're all just like having a laugh as we swap pictures of teacup chihuahuas, and
No, you're
we're
fine.
putting dust
My
uniforms on them.
freaking, I finally got them to lie down too, and now they're looking at me like, "What? I can't roughhouse." No, but and I'll say this one last comment about my dogs. I took them out for an hour to go play frisbee at the AT&T park, and they are now just like, I don't know. It's just crazy. They have like unlimited energy. They've been to the dog park twice today already, and that's not even counting this morning. But anyway, the point is that people played certain people like Cane Sparrow, like Movado, like Cubs, and like Cujo, were very, very savvy about connections, about making the right places at the right time. I did that. I tried to do this. I tried as much as I could, making the connections with Outer Heaven early, by helping them with the Winter War and later giving them districts when they got kicked out, and trying to defend their districts into defending it successfully against NF and and other people who attacked it until they wouldn't let me anymore. Having them help me when we got attacked, when we got mass attacked by the DNS donut, when AE and NF teamed up against us. These people, certain people, played the game so well and had the connections, like, and the ambassadorship, like, so with other people, that it made the game extremely difficult to play as a single corporation. It obliterated the sense of your team being able to accomplish anything, because one team was not ever going to be efficacious against the mountains and mountains of work that other people put in to have 16 teams show up when Nyan San got blitzed. I mean, I remember when we had all of right before we joined DNS to go and break up the donut from the inside, I had Ghost Shadow, of all people, help me broker with all of the Spanish speaking folk. The coalition came together and they spent something like 2 billion IS to attack all of Nyan San's districts, and we had a cluster of like 20 teams getting on that morning. And I remember reading, talking to Killer and begging him, "Hey dude, top men, help us." And Sarai was like, "Oh, FA's not the good guys, don't help them. It's going to help us later to have NF's ties." And so all of these things were either working for us or against us. And this all plays back into what PC became instead of what corporation battles were. Whereas it was simply a battle on battle between a corporation, PC was way more of a scope and became way more like nullsec has become, as far as the intermingling of politics and what politics was going to achieve for you or not achieve for you, than I think anyone ever imagined, anyone ever anticipated. I don't think that any corporation could just go into PC and think I'm going to go and win some PC matches today and take a district and be okay. That just was never going to work. And I don't think that CCP ever made that clear to anyone going into PC, and that there's no handbook or breaking you in or anything like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no. Well, what you've really brought up is, I think the lasting legacy that PC, the Dust version PC, is that it established the metagame in Dust. And if you think about it, the one thing that CCP can do at least as good, if not better than everybody else, is generate the environment that a player-driven game can literally expand beyond the boundaries of the computer in front of you or the TV screen in front of you. And that's literally what they've done with Eve, and that's frankly why Eve's so successful for going on 11 years. And we got a taste of that in Dust, and a lot of it was because of the metagame establishing itself, that overarched the entire flavor of the Dust community. And I think that honestly was a huge thing, and that was unique to any first-person shooter game that I've ever seen. And frankly, it's the thing that attracted a lot of people to Dust. They could get a very Eve-like experience, or at least that was the idea, that you could get an experience like that, where things outside just the match mattered. That, I think, really drew me in, and that's one of the reasons I was very attracted to, because I was already familiar with Eve. But I like the idea of doing it in a first-person shooter format. So for all of the problems it had and all of the toxicity it created through either misconceptions, mismanagement, bad mechanics, or perhaps on occasion, some malicious intent, I think the lasting legacy of PC in at least our generation of Dust players was the metagame and what it did for the metagame. And kind of with that, what I would like to do is kind of like drive forward a little bit and talk a little bit about in Legion, what should a PC-like mechanic look like? What should it be? I just want to spend a few minutes kind of talking about that, because we talk a lot about FAC War and stuff like that, because that actually is probably the most successful thing in terms of how Dust and Eve have cooperated, and probably one that can easily be replicated if they do it in Legion to great effect. But I'm very keen to have you guys kind of talk a little bit about what you think you would like to see in Legion as far as a PC or PC-like environment. What would that need to look like?
Well, we've kind of been talking about this in the Skype chat back and forth, and one of the questions I raised was, it makes sense that in a 16 versus 16 or whatever the number is, in a battle, the team with the better players is going to win. But in terms of what we have for Dust, you can't do the sort of thing in Eve where you can take overwhelming numbers of people who aren't that skilled or don't have as good of gear and throw it against a smaller group of very elite players. And so, I'm more leaning towards the fact that while, yes, in a single battle, if you have a balanced mechanic like we have in Dust, the better players need to win the battle. But I'd also like to see a mechanic where you can take a big group of people or small corps and actually force your way in with sheer numbers and just overwhelm them. I think that would be good, and I think it's more of a new Eden feel to it, and I'd like to see more of that in Legion.
Yeah, at least from my experience, I'd very much like to see more of just even if it was something small like statistical bonuses, just small little stat buffs that would help you out, or maybe reduction of timers would make like massive size or scale matter. Because as cool as it was to have like OH, a corp of like 50 people, fend off DNS, what was it, like 99.16%? I mean, it was super cool, but at the end of the day, it's like it feels like stabbing an elephant to death through like a 3-inch thin hole in the wall. Just kind of jab a shank through repeatedly because they can't fit. And I know that's a horrible metaphor, but basically, the whole funneling mechanic of Dust really kind of ruined the sense of scale when like 16 people managed to beat like 30 other teams, and in the process of beating like 30 other teams just because they have better tactics, you're able to essentially fend off the other 99.16% of the game, something that my old corp Mullen Labe couldn't do with like 500 people. And I love Mullen Labe, but that just goes to show that like numbers didn't mean anything.
Yeah, I think in general, I want to see a mechanic where a small group cannot hold a large piece of land on their own. I think one of the things I proposed a while ago is something kind of tied in with a PvE element where a corp has to actually go into their district and scrub it for there's like a drone infestation. They have to scrub their districts and take time to actually go and keep the districts clean and uninfested so they can actually pull a profit with those districts. And I think that if you have massive amounts of districts like we had with the Blue Donut in a very small group of people, that's not feasible because there's just not enough hours in the day to actually go and do it. In regardless of how that mechanic works, I think I want to discourage small, tiny groups holding large chunks of land by making use of timers and whatnot. I think that's bad. I think that if you've got something, and if you've got land, it should be proportional to the size of your group and your ability to actually defend it, rather than just we're going to stack all the timers in such a way that 16 people can defend way more space than they should actually have.
Well, I think that personally, I think timers are needed to prevent the just, well, they went to sleep, so now we can kill them design. But I think that it needs to be, hopefully Legion can hit a larger scale, I would say, to the point that, that you need to reliably have a larger group of people, which would make it a lot more difficult for just a core group.
Yeah, I believe PlanetSide 2 in large part suffers from that issue of, oh, you spent the whole week conquering this continent, and then you wake up the next day and, oh, looks like the skeleton crew took half the continent back. Well, that sucks. And I do think that timers are a bit, like, I wouldn't like to see timers reappear in Legion, but I feel like they could pull off something, and this is radical and probably never going to happen, but something along the lines of maybe perhaps setting up NPCs or something to guard the districts, and you could beat them in like PvE things. Like you don't actually have to physically appear on your districts to defend it. You can let the AI do it, and perhaps the better you fund your districts, the more like well funded they are, the more defenses there will be, and maybe the enemies will be slightly harder. And this is extremely improbable, probably never going to happen. I'd like to see it happen because it's a cool mechanic for PvE. That's
The
just
one
a
thing
thought.
that Legion has that fail to win side or pay to die side doesn't have is the Eve link. And I'm sorry, but Legion might be its own standalone game, but it will go nowhere like Dust went with a shitty little fucking orbital space shop drop on a stupid planet. It'll go nowhere without the Eve market, the Eve universe, and so on. No Eve universe, no Legion. It's that simple. It might be a great standalone game, as that French dude says, CCP Rouge has said. It needs the Eve
That French
Legion
dude.
link. It needs Eve Legion needs to be linked. It needs to be linked. Fail to Win side doesn't have that.
Oh, I
We
agree.
need Eve as much as Eve need us, to expand the Eve universe. We need it. They need us. That's how it works.
I think the main problem with the Eve Link was that due to the nature of how the two games
Poor
operated,
design.
you come into like a scenario where Dust and I believe by an extension Legion would need Eve to survive. But the question really is, would Eve need Legion to survive? And I don't think CCP. I mean, I'm not a mind reader, but I don't think CCP has that entirely figured out on how to make EVE Online players care
Think
about
about it
like,
this
be
way, dude.
interdependent.
Legion is a way into Eve. Legion, said by CCP Rouge, is going to be free to play. Well, start them on Legion, get them into Eve where you have to pay a monthly subscription of $10, £10 a month. Then you're paying. Then you're invested. Then you've got time into a game. But like Dust, but now you're paying. So now your money's going into it. A bit like the people that bought shit tons of BPOs and packs and all that jazz. They've got time invested into it, So they've got the biggest say when it comes to certain things. I haven't said anything about PC because I don't play PC. PC and me, I don't know anything about it, so I don't comment on it. But when it comes to the Legion Eve Dust Link, the Eve Dust Link is terrible. It's one spaceship in Faction War. They've gotten rid of the other bits and pieces, and it's a 3-minute timer. They need to reconfigure the Eve Legion link. Without Eve, Legion will die. And Legion is a way into Eve, if you think about it that way. I know I've got my tinfoil hat on, and I know that I get hammered for it quite regularly, but put that on your bacon sandwich, and taste it maybe,
Well,
Drink some of my Kool-Aid, bro, not theirs.
Eve players tend to disagree, but I honestly think Eve needs Legion almost as much as Legion needs Eve. I think Eve's in a really cruddy state, and I think the added dynamics of having a whole new class of players to interact with and add to that universe would do an immense wonder for Eve, but it has to be done right, and it hasn't been done right so far.
Well, one thing I did want to kind of jump in on this because I think BAM, you kind of brought this up, like you and Hynox both. In terms of PC for me, I think there's a couple of things that you could do, and a lot of it does have to do with how it interacts with Legion, how Legion would interact with Eve. So, like, I think we all agree that setting a mechanic up where a small number of guys can control a vast swath of geographic terrain is problematic. I think the timers are necessary, and it's also a good gateway into Eve, because Eve, for a lot of, for all intents and purposes, runs off of timers when you get into the big fights and stuff. So I do like I like maybe bringing back something in the pre 1.4 days where you make distance, like you have like some kind of structure or some sort of court pass or something like that you have to drop in a system or on a planet, and the further away you go from that, the more expensive it is for you to either move clones, or it's not guaranteed you can reach far enough to try to secure other districts without dropping these other passes. And you generally would have to pay the Eve guys to get into a system, anchor something, and then defend it, which would then establish like a communications relay to get your little clone signals over there so you could take a planet. There's about 1,001 things you could do, but it really comes down to, I think you should make power projection an issue, and then you can play with the timers. I mean, there's different ways you can do it, but I think if you did that, you would help a lot with making larger numbers matter. And ultimately, we really, I think we all want more than 16 guys on a team. I think we would like something much more substantial than that. And I think that is actually one of the things we didn't talk about is like the low player count per team, doesn't help any of this. So, I mean, when you can get up to like 24, 32, 48 guys per team, now that's pretty legit. And there's a lot of different things you can do that way. So that would be one of the things I would offer is that if they could work out through probably like PI type systems in terms of how do you put something on a planet that you can, or like an anchoring system where that's how you get clones into a system. There would need to be like an NPC way to do it, like an NPC corp way to do it, so that Dust guys would know with no Eve side initially at least could pay a fairly hefty amount, for an NPC anchor, something like that, like a beachhead almost to get you into a system or a planet. But the optimized way to do it and the cost-effective way to do it would be utilizing an Eve side, partner, Merc, or alliance partner or whatever. That's my personal pitch on it. That I think you could do a lot by utilizing Eve. And one of the things that, and by the way, I'm gonna get a quick shout out to a bunch of the guys in the Addiscene local. That's like a low sec local in Dust. And there's probably about 90 different players in that. It's very, very compact local that a lot of guys are in. I'm actually in that district, that system right now on the Eve side. I'm transitioning to another location. And I watched an exchange these guys had with some Eve players. They were literally talking about what we're talking about. And I could desperately see them trying to type on their little PS3 controllers. And so I had to kind of hop in and help them out a little bit. But, the Dust players want what Eve has. They want to play the mechanics of the game in a different way, but I think a lot of the advantages that Eve has in terms of that meta game and like the social part of the game, they crave that and they want to figure out how to matter into Legion. I think if there's a way that you could make, if PC in terms of a land holding mechanic, that may or may not be the way to go if you wanted to really get deep into Eve integration, because now you're really talking about like SOV and a lot of different things like how nullsec works. You got to be really careful about how that works. So I'm not sure how to do it, but I think the more that you make, the more you incentivize the use of an Eve and Legion link through the generation of ISK or some other benefit or LP like loyalty points, I think that's the way to go. And I think you can use Aurum, LP, or ISK. Those are the three basic CCP in-game monetary functions, and they're both common to Dust and Legion. Well, correction, Dust and Eve. So my assumption is in Legion you're going to have the same things. And if there's a way that you can leverage that, I think that's the way to do it. So maybe PC becomes maybe more faction warfare related, where you're taking planets and making it easier to secure systems. I don't know, or it reaches into nullsec. I'm not sure.
I think like a key thing with Eve, and this is something that I want to see expanded upon like tenfold in Legion, because I think one of the main flaws with Dust is it didn't have nearly the amount of diversity that Eve has, and that comes mainly with the fact that Eve's like a flat out MMO. Dust is a fairly typical FPS. But the thing is, in Eve, you don't have to participate in the big PvP wars at all. You can just completely negate it. You'll probably want to because other stuff is boring, but it's optional. So the idea is, hopefully, what I'm mainly hoping for in Legion, you don't have to do PvP, because I played Dust with the mentality of one day I won't have to do PvP, switch to PvE, and I could try PvP from time and time again, but that's up to me, and I can just and I don't want to go full like tinfoil hat theories here, but we are talking about Legion, so the tinfoil hats are on anyway. So I'm just gonna come out and say it. I want to board Eve players' ships, and that should be allowed to happen because they talked about that in 2013, I believe, and to an extent
2009 actually, mate. That's when they talked about it then.
Yeah, they've been talking about that for a while, ever since the Lake Station walking pipe dream. But I believe The fact is, like, a lot of players, like, the only thing you can do in Dust relatively to prove yourself is FW and PC. And PC and FW are fun, but there's the fundamental flaws, and that's about it. I guess you could stomp pubs, but that's kind of like going out and murdering crippled children in the woods. Not that rewarding.
Your allergies are quite dark, dude. Are you okay? You need some more beer and bacon in your life, dude.
Oh no, yeah, a lot of people actually say, like, after I write the stuff on the War Room that some of you may or may not have read already and gotten me banned before, people are like, what drugs were you using? I'm like, sadly, none.
Dust.
Yeah, dude.
Who's using
Involve
dust?
more beer,
came out
insert more bacon. You'll be much chilled out. I think.
Unfortunately.
No,
But,
I think you're the Hynox man. I got to tell you, that's what I've always wanted to do. Like, I don't know about the ships; that would be kind of tough. But I've always wanted to be able to get on somebody's POS, somebody's like space station, or like you've already got the structures on the ground, like the PI structures that dudes pay a lot of ISK for to put on the ground to make them money. I want to be able to go in there and take that away from them, or I want to be
Yeah.
able to take their POS tower away from them. That I mean, I'm a huge fan of that.
I
You
think,
leave my
like,
PR stations alone, Jay. All
the
right, you leave
golden
my shit
dream
alone.
for me
And
is
This
that's
starts
why,
making me money,
and
bro.
that's exactly why we need the ability to assault PI stations.
yeah, my new Eden dream at some point is if, and I hope to God, Legion PvE has some sort of stealth mechanic, because that, if that is true, the ideal thing would be for you can, like, get yourself into stations either on ground or in space, maybe even inside Eve player ships, although that's far-fetched. But, like, the idea being that you could physically, like, sneak into player-made installations as a Dust player. You can just sneak into Eve crap, and they won't even know you're there. And they'll have precautions to detect you that'll, like, range in difficulty depending on how good they are. But you can sneak in and maybe steal resources, steal ISK, wreck their ship from the inside. And if I could do that, and it's just stealth related, screw it. I will be a space bank robber. That's all I'm doing. Like, screw PvP entirely. I wanna be a
Payday 2
space bank
Space
robber.
Edition.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think you're basically saying what CCP has told us on more than one occasion or heavily hinted at, and that's frankly why we're all here and trying to stick around, because we think maybe one day they'll figure out how to deliver that, I guess.
Yeah, it's pure tinfoil hat theory, but I can dream.
Yeah.
It's futile, but
Well, I mean, like I said, man, it's in terms of the future. I think everybody, if nothing else, and I think Bam, you harp on this occasionally, is Dust is a great tool to figure out what to get right in Legion. It's a great way of figuring out mechanical balance, weapon balance. It's also a great way to look back and figure out, hey, what did we try? Like, where was our eyes bigger than our stomach, if you know what I mean? Like, they had a probably a grand vision for what PC would be, but they just couldn't deliver. So hopefully that they're taking lessons learned, and they're figuring out ways that they can incorporate or grow or expand into that vision, or at least put the building blocks in place where eventually they can, once they figure out, how do you properly integrate things or write the code or whatever. So kind of bringing it to a close, what we've generally talked about tonight has been sort of where PC came from, some of the drama that was associated with PC, some of the macro issues that led to a really fast rise and really fast fall. Well, really a fast rise, a plateau, and then I think a fairly steep but gradual fall. And PC right now, it is what it is. It is effectively a very mediocre court battle system. There's a school of thought that maybe they should figure out a way to bring back court battles in Dust right now and just call it good, and then focus a lot more on faction warfare. I tend to kind of think that is the way they should go, is they should really emphasize fac war, and then perhaps come up with an esports concept, that you could use maybe the PC mechanics around, not unlike the old Fight Club that we used to have. So we transitioned through that, and we kind of talked a little bit about sort of the different perspectives on PC, from sort of like where you stand is where you sit, like where you were sitting at the table when you pulled up to PC and you tried to figure out what it was. it was a very different picture, I think, for people depending on when they joined the game and what they wanted to get out of it. But I think we can all agree it's one of those things that you really want in Legion, and you really wish we had gotten better in Dust. So with that, I'd like to any last parting shots on the PC discussion, guys.
Right, I'll kick it off then. Right, fair enough. I didn't know much about PC. I played 3 matches, so I didn't comment. Sorry. Can I have beer now, please?
I don't blame you for being poorer than me.
Don't blame me for being noob, bro. I'm just a noob.
Aside from maybe, well, I know I'm poorer than Zatara, but I don't think... Don't talk to PC players about money. You're probably going to be depressed.
I got 2.5 billion sitting in my personal account. Do you want some?
Oh, well, I'll go fuck myself then.
BPOs, bro. BPOs.
Dude, I'm telling you,
Yeah.
anyone who plays this game a lot is going to have money. I think that it's funny when people say, oh, you know, like if PC weren't around, these people who have tons of ISK would be broke. I only think that there's some average players that have a boatload of ISK from locking that actually made ISK, and they're eventually going to lose it if they continue to play in Proto because they're ISK negative in most of their matches. But most of the PC players who were actually at the top of their game don't lose ISK anyways in pub matches, so we were already going to make money, you know, through pubs. It's just, it was going to happen either way. We might not have had, you know, 3 or 4 billion, but, you know, we would have like one or two, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I think that there's still a lot of PC players out there also that I know that have lost most of the, like, only lost money in PC overall because they've just invested so much into, you know, trying to make their corp what it is. I remember Cujo putting on his form signature until the end when he gave away all his districts that he was the brokest CEO on Dust, and it was because, you know, he never took any money, and this was something I tried to emulate. Like, he wanted to make other people in his corporation money, but he never, you know, he put all of this ISK into the endeavor, never really made a profit off of it. And so I think that there are a lot of, you know, at least leadership like that should be like that, you know, as opposed to people that I've heard of that have said, oh, well, you know, I'm just going to take 100 million ISK from the wallet here and just add it to my personal account because, you know, I'm whoever. And that's the way I feel about it. You know, I think that there is a, I don't know, I'm getting off on a tangent here. It's probably because it's 11:47 at night, but I think that people should be making money for their corporations. But I definitely don't think that it's, I don't think that the people who have made money would not have made the money if PC didn't exist. They just wouldn't have as much.
Yeah, I make a profit anyway. It doesn't really... I mean, it's pure bragging rights. Like, I still stand by my opinion before I even got into, like, higher up PC. After about, like, 30 million ISK is irrelevant. You just have a theoretical sufficient amount to, like, sustain your proto usage. After that, ISK means nothing, because you can buy 100 of, like, every item in the game and still have a little bit of ISK left.
And there's nothing to spend it on. There's nothing. Dude,
it's useless, because even if I were to buy, like, 1,000 of my proto suits, it doesn't matter. I don't let them drop below, like, 10.
You know what I did before I left I started playing Destiny? I contacted a couple people that I knew would never use Balax or anything, and I said, look, I'll pay you 10 mil per Balac, or 5 mil per Balac if I could drive the price low, or 1 mil per Balac if they were really stupid. And I probably spent like 2 billion ISK just buying a boatload of Balacs and just transferring them through PC matches. And there was a 50% loss rate from these jackasses. Like, I just think it's funny. Like, not that the jackass is for anybody that was here or listening that actually did sell me their Balacs. It's all good. I'm not making fun of you. I'm just saying that, you know, the point being that there was nothing else for me to spend ISK on. So, you know, because CCP never made it so that, and this is something that Destiny is doing wrong, to tangent here even further, is that when there's nothing to spend your money on, you have to have gear that's exclusive. And there's nothing that is unique or exclusive about Destiny, because they sell exotics like crazy from Zuran people, and it just happens to everyone so easily. Whereas, like, at least on Dust, like, officer gear, like telling someone, hey, dude, I have something like 280 Balacs. What do you have? You know, that's like more of a status symbol than having 4 billion ISK now. That's the sad part that we've gotten to.
Yeah. I think that's a common trend with games, is that they don't know how to get currency right. I mean, unless it's literally something masochistic, like your life is essentially your money, where you're treading into, like, Dark Souls territory, then, you know, you're not really... Because It almost feels like you have to be damn near masochistic to have money be worth anything,
Well, I mean, it's
because
just
otherwise people just naturally farm it.
like I played a game, and this is a game I've brought up numerous times in the past as like a as demonstrative of one point or another. But I played a game called Ragnarok Online, which was a 2D spread on 3D backgrounds MMORPG, and it has its own player economy that we ran, and the server that I was on, like for example, the items were priced by players because of how rare they were, and they had drops that made them uber rare. Like when I got a item that was called a Deviling card, which dropped on a 0.01 drop on a mini boss that spawned every 8 hours. So only 3 people on my server had this card that allowed me to get an ability on an item. And so that item had value and distinguished me. Like, and other people had similar cards that were like, wow, you farmed this, you got this item. There were god items that you had to have entire, clans in order to even have a chance at building one, because they were never sold, because there was only literally 5 or 6 on the, in the whole game of an item. And they were never owned by a single individual. They were always owned by an actual corporation, like a clan, because of how difficult they were to actually create. And that sort of thing will fuel a community for years on end, but if it's balanced.
Well,
but I don't know.
No, I think
nobody gets that. I feel like games just miss it.
Yeah.
You're making a good point. And again, one of the things that Eve could do ultimately for Legion is if they could truly figure out a way to scale parts of the economy, like very specific parts of the economy and the structure in, that would be that'd go a long way. I mean, that's actually, like, I know a lot of people that play Eve purely, it's not about the pew pewing in spaceships. It's about all the other stuff that you can do other than pew pewing. So, which generally, by the way, is centers around how do you make ISK, or how do you basically trade a stock market.
Aren't there books written on success in EVE Online based purely on economics?
Actually, there are, and if you ever care to do it, and I'll pitch this before we move into a lightning round of sort of fit of the week. You can Google some of the academic search engines, and you can pull up master's theses that were econ theses or poli-sci theses that used Eve mechanics and Eve play as a primary reference. So with that, what I'd like to do real quick, we had a fantastic discussion on PC, by the way, and kind of branched into some big macro topics there. I mean, we clearly talk about this shit for a long time, but I do want to kind of start bringing the show to a close. And what I'd like to do is kind of go through a little bit of a lightning round. Pokey brought up a kind of good idea, and really BAMM brought it up, and then we've sort of foisted it on Pokey to lead it off. But we're going to transition to the fit of the week discussion. We'll go through it real quick. Pokey, your turn.
Okay,
What
I actually
have you been doing lately?
I got my fit of the week from Fox Gaten. He posted this up. It's kind of after my own heart. It's a nice cheap fit because I love BPOs. So his fit that he suggested to the forums was a Sever Sentinel suit, 3 militia armor repairs, a flux grenade, a militia SMG, and a militia HMG. And you can do it with like a Templar suit. It's just an MR heavy, but the whole thing costs 3,010 ISK or 6,010 ISK if you actually have to buy the suit. But it's a nice cheap throwaway suit. It's a lot of fun. I love my BPOs and my heavies, so it's been a lot of fun.
BPOs for the win.
Good deal. BAMM, you're up, brother. What have you been running? Anything?
Well, it was the Million Clone Pew Pew a few weeks ago. I tended to find that the Galente Sentinel standard normal fit, armor tank it to hell and gone, fitter proto HMG, and then with the flux grenade, and then just send it out on its merry way. That held up pretty well, but I needed to have my GIMP attached to me because I'm finding that you can't last as long as you used to. So yeah, as long as you've got a GIMP, you're good heavy.
Yep, no, fair point. Sarai?
I've just been running a variety. Nothing, no particular fit of the week.
Okay. And Zatara?
I am just enjoying my Minmando, and nothing really new going on. Just having fun. I played with the ion pistol, and that That was pretty fun. The Allen pistol was pretty fun. So was the bolt pistol, which
Space
might
Magnum.
need a little bit of a dude. I just enjoy playing with OP things. Obviously, it's a little fun, but that might need a little bit of a nerf. Maybe just a little nerf. I did not suggest that buff. Just by the way, I did not have. I will say, in my defense, I do not claim buffing that bolt pistol as part of what I put forward as a member of the CPM. Can I just say that? Can I say that?
I think that's fair.
No matter what you say, any one of you guys say, it's always going to be your fault.
I guess I should just take more of the blame. I'm so sorry. It's my fault. I don't know.
He nerfed it to shit with his bare hands.
Oh God. So, Hynox, how about you, bro? What do you?
In a non-serious,
so.
In a non-serious note, I've been running the Shingen E assault rifle in Destiny. In a serious note, because I've barely been playing Dust, I've been running HMG since the dawn of time, and that stopped. If you want a really, really scumbag fit, and I will warn you, this is an evil, evil fit, run the Proto Amar Sentinel with the Freedom HMG, high slots stacked with damage mods, and low slots stacked with complex
Dude,
reps.
don't give my game away, bro. That's like my secret fit, dude. Dude,
It's
stop,
evil.
stop, bro.
No,
Dude, stop,
I'll just
stop,
stop
stop.
there. I'll
Dude,
stop
that's
there.
like, dude, stop,
It's
bro.
vile.
Like, right, okay, no one
It's
heard that, right?
physically,
The Amar
like,
Sentinel
painful.
is still good. My favorite suit.
I've been using Amar Sentinel
No, dude, shut up.
since
Shush,
Chromosome.
keep quiet. Shush, keep quiet, bro. Shut your mouth. Keep quiet now, yeah? Shush. Shush yourself, bro. Yeah? That freedom HMG is godly, bro. Shush. If you tell anyone, they're gonna nerf it. Shush. Don't nerf my stuff.
Reps?
Leave my heavy alone. Leave my HMG alone. Leave my forge gun alone. Don't
I
touch
don't
my
think
shit.
I think you don't want anyone to know you run 3 complex reps and you heal faster than they can say oops.
Triple stack.
Like,
rep.
cut my head
HMG
off,
turn
it'll
speed.
grow back by the
Nerf
time the
it.
blade leaves.
Oh goodness. Okay. Let's see. So I've been trying to mess around with the the different sidearms a little bit. I'm normally don't do the Iron Wolf route where I put 1 point of SP into everything on the board. It's not how I do it. But I did drop a little bit of SP into some different sidearms, and I did use the bolt pistol, which I'm now referring to as the Booyah pistol. I did try the Flaylock again, and it's actually I think it's in a good spot. So I was dual wielding bolt pistols and Flaylocks in a Min-Logi suit, which was somewhat fascinating. It's definitely a just to have fun fit. It's not a serious business fit, but that was sort of what I was playing with, was bolt pistols and Flaylocks on a Logi suit, or not a Logi suit, but a Min assault suit. Sorry.
That sounds like a nice fit, dude.
I'm not a big pistol guy. The bolt pistol had I read. I know
You mean
the
the Dirty Harry pistol, yeah?
Yeah.
That disgusting thing that I loathe.
I read the stats in the range, but when you actually put it into practice, that thing is if you're a keyboard mouse player, if you play like Soraya, you should be able. That thing's about as good as a TAC AR. It's vicious.
And this is where I become a bit of an advocate for numbers. 9 times out of 10 don't represent gameplay, because a player will find a great way to manipulate the numbers to his advantage. So therefore, gameplay tends to win out over numbers. But that's me and my tinfoil hat speaking. Yay!
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, I've been using the ion pistol as well, Zatara, and I gotta say, I find it slightly less effective than a hairdryer, maybe a bench.
You haven't played
It's a troll
Delta
kill.
Drop.
It's a troll kill.
It
right?
is like the plasma pistol and the Metroid arm cannon, except it takes the worst of both and the goodness of none.
Yeah, but BCO suits and troll kills are the best way to have fun in Dust. Come on.
Oh yeah, I'm not. Yeah, that's why I'm running the fucking Freedom with 5,000 reps.
I
I'm
trained Lente
unkillable.
Commando just for plasma cannon troll kills. That's the only reason I did it, and I do it to this day.
Dude, plasma cannon is not. That thing's legit now.
Well, it's the Hotfix cannon, but yeah, no, it's they made it even easier to use, so I'm having fun with that.
Okay. All right, guys. Well, let's. This is good discussion, but let's go ahead and wrap this one up with shout outs. And we'll kind of go just push right through it. I'll go right down the top of the line. Bam, any shout outs?
Yeah, I just want to say cheers to CTV Red Boy for his comment to Pyrex. I did chuckle there. I thought it was quite fitting. Yeah, I died against two guys also one time in band camp. That was pretty funny. I had a giggle there. Yeah, and that's really it. Thanks for inviting me on to this podcast again, and thank you for putting up with my drunk nonsense. Cheers.
Absolutely, man. No problem. Hynox.
I'd like to thank my mostly dead now Corp Outer Heaven for its cool Metal Gear name. I would also like to thank BAMM HAVOC for telling me to shut up for this awesome fit, which I will now
Shut up,
post
bro.
to every
Yeah, you said
medium
enough.
possible. But yeah, thanks for letting me on the podcast and dealing with my stuttering.
Yeah, no problem, brother. Pokey.
Shout out to my corp, OSG. We took a hack at the raid in Destiny earlier today, and we unfortunately had to stop because I had to come here on the show, but that was a lot of fun. So it's been good playing with them over there.
Okay. And Soraya?
Yeah, I'm gonna give my shout out to CCP for nerfing the ADS and say hello to CEO Pyrex if he listens. And yeah, no, you needed your nerf. Take it. Take it. That's all I got.
Oh, he listens to this podcast. I can say that right now. He listens.
Wait, did I DC?
No, there's just an awkward silence because Jason didn't close out the podcast cleanly.
Oh, okay, wait. Okay, well, I'll give out my shout outs even though Jason's not here. Jason, I love you. I'm sorry for taking the spotlight. This is Zatara, and I just want to give a shout out to Chicago Cubs forever, and Kane Sparrow, and my boy Free Beers, and Regnum, C for Corruption, and Wombat in Combat for a couple months ago hosting me in his house the last night of my stay in Iceland. And I'd just like to give a nice shout out to all the noobs and bros that sold me their Balax and things. Thank you so much
Isn't
for your
that half
weapons.
the PC community you just named off?
Actually,
Half
really,
the PC community you haven't heard of in a year.
Yeah, you aren't wrong.
just a few names, I'm not pulling them out of a hat or anything, just a few names.
I'd like to give out a shout out to Barack Obama.
Her shout outs are real weird.
And don't forget to shout to Zatara's dogs. They were an excellent guest on the show.
Well, they were giving shout outs.
Here to that.
And now they've fallen asleep. They worked themselves up so hard, and then they fell asleep.
That sounds like most PCs. So for shout outs for me, I would like to give a shout out to kind of the old PC crowd, and Zatara actually, launched through a bunch of them. And I'll just say, anybody that was playing when Dust went live on the PS3, and anybody that's ever actually tried to make a go of PC, this is why we did the show. We had a lot of people talking, or at least mentioning it to me or asking me about it, about doing a PC specific show, at least kind of sort of like a broad one. So for everybody that was giving feedback, and some of them were vets who've been around for a while that you guys probably haven't seen play, like random Twitter hits, stuff like that. But anybody that's played PC, shout outs to you, because again, one of the biggest lasting contributions that Dust brought to the gamer community was understanding that you could metagame in an FPS in a way that at least I am not aware that people were able to do in any other game. So big shout out to all you guys. And I would be remiss if I didn't give a big shout out to Agony Unleashed. That's my Eveside Corp. No finer group of small gang PvP guys have I ever dealt with. And it's a good situation when you have to work your ass off just to keep up and stay even with the rest of the group. So that's my shout outs for the night. And with that, guys, we're going to bring this episode to a close. And we, again, as always, really, really desire your feedback. We really appreciate you guys pinging us on Dust Mail, Eve Mail, hitting us up, if you see us in game or on Skype, Twitter, the whole smash. Please visit the website, www.biomassed.net. You'll see our episode list down there, and you got the contact me buttons. You can always get either me, Pokey, or Zell if you've got some feedback. So please hit us up on that. And at some point, there's a couple of us talking about actually doing some blogging on there, which we'll probably get up here in the next 3 weeks, I think, once we kind of get the technical pieces sorted out. So again, really appreciate the support we get from everybody out there, and props to BAMM, Hynox, and Zatara for coming on tonight. So with that, guys, this is Biomass signing off.
Jadek, I love your beard. I love it. It's lovely and luscious.
Meow.
Jadek, Manaham, your beard is
Meow.
gorgeous. Love it. I wish I had your beard.